Thanks for joining us for another edition of Communication Steroids, the weekly podcast that shows you how to become a better public speaker, a more effective presenter, and a conscious and clear communicator. This is where you can find tips, tools, and techniques that you can put to use today. Here are your hosts of Communication Steroids, Tim Gonzo Gordon and Roger Pike.
I can hear you breathing.
You want me to stop?
Well, no, I don't want you to stop breathing. I just was saying I can hear you breathing really heavily on the microphone. So, you know.
One of my better lines in a while.
It wasn't bad. It wasn't bad. All right, thanks for joining us here on the podcast from Communication Steroids. I'm Tim Gordon.
And I'm Roger Pike.
Yeah. And we are Communication Steroids. Oh, wait, we already said that, didn't we?
We did, yeah. You're getting redundant here. You're a little bit, you know.
That's okay. We're, you know, not only are we a communications training team, of which we certainly are, public speaking and that sort of thing, we're also now a sort of TV team.
Well, you can see us right here.
It's weird because we're...
Before your very eyes.
And we're not trained to do this very well.
Yeah.
Because we keep looking at the screen, which is down there, but we should be looking at the
camera.
The camera, which is right there.
Yeah, and we don't. We look at us.
Or if we're in a movie, we
never
never look at the camera. So,
right.
Anyway.
We look at the monitor, and you shouldn't. You're supposed to look at the camera. But what the heck?
So we'll be back with our podcast, which is having to do with research. And I don't know that we've actually talked about research much.
You can't just stand up and give a speech. You have to put some time into putting it together, and research is key.
And it's the same thing as researching anything, whether you're researching a blog post or an article. Interesting because you learn things when you do that. We'll be right back after this. Yes, I know it's true.
Stitcher is an award-winning provider of news and talk radio for your mobile phone. Stitcher is smart radio for your smartphone.
So, to you, Roger, what's the most important thing about research? The thing that just pops out of your head as to about research.
Figure out what you need.
Figure out what you need. And
first thing.
Second thing? Where to get it?
Where to find out where to get it. You're exactly right. I mean, you know, I used to be a newsman. So for me, research was conducting interviews. So you'd hear about something that was happening, you know, the core of the story, and then you'd flesh it out by calling the people who knew something about what was happening,
right,
and doing an interview. So that was research for me way back when. So the first thing that you need to do is to, you know what your topic is, and then know the areas in which your expertise requires very little support from research. That will give you the holes in your speech that you need to, or holes in your presentation, excuse me, not speech. We're talking about more than that, aren't we? The holes in your presentation that maybe you need to flesh out with research, then figure out where you're going to go to get that. And it could be the internet, it could be the library, you could actually do what I did a lot of way back when, and that is call some people who know what they're talking about and talk to them, interview them.
I think that's a good idea because you need to go to the source of where the information is. And you're right, you need to know what you need to know, first off. Years ago when I got into the trade show industry, after spending all those years I did in radio, I was cold. I didn't know what the industry was all about. So one of my ways of learning about it was to get on the phone and call people. Now, I ended up recording these, and it eventually sort of morphed into the Trade Show Guy Marketing Podcast. But it was great to me because I'd spend 15 or 20 minutes on the phone with these consultants, these experts, people that had been in the industry for 10, 15, 20, sometimes 30 years, sharing their knowledge with a specific part of what I was looking for.
Right.
And it became a very interesting way to learn things. And I thought that was a great way to do it. I sort of stumbled on it. It really wasn't by design as much as these are the people I keep running across their names. Will they talk to me?
Yeah.
and they all did. Actually, one guy wanted to charge me $100 for the podcast. He says, "I'll do it for $100.
Yeah.
I'll do an interview with you for $100." I went, "Thank you, appreciate it."
Yeah.
But moving on. But there's also a lot of other things. We have a sort of a resource in front of us for research. What kind of things are you pulling out of there that are of note to you?
Well, you know, some of the basic things that you always need to remember, and that is, for example, when you do research, you need your necessary supplies and that kind of thing. I mean, if you're going to do interviews, better have a tape recorder. That works.
It works.
Yeah.
If you're taking notes, if you're a good note taker, that's not a problem. In fact, you want to either transcribe the notes or take notes while you're recording as well.
Yeah. Exactly.
I think that works as well.
Another thing that you need to do is to recognize the fact that you're going to, if you have any kind of access to anything at all, including the internet, you're going to just be deluged. There's a good word.
Well, that's true.
Deluged with information. It's going to be an avalanche. We live in the information age, and it's true.
You can't read everything, so you have to know when to say when. You have to know how to skim things, look for keywords, find things that sort of stand out and capture those, whether it's taking some notes or making a few oral notes, audio notes on your recorder.
Unless you are doing a presentation on Shakespeare, you're not reading Shakespeare.
That's true.
So recognize that. This isn't prose. You don't have to read every word. You don't have to, get the meaning of the words and the
I think part of it is informed by, if you're doing a 10-minute presentation, that's different research than a 30-minute presentation.
Oh, yeah.
First of all, if you're asked to do a 30-minute or 40-minute presentation, you're already probably considered an expert. Unless it's in some sort of corporate situation where you've been tasked to do a specific presentation on a specific topic. But the fact is, you can always flesh out the information you have even as an expert. A lot of my blog posts come about because some research or reading I've done. For instance, earlier this summer I did a blog post on mobile marketing. I was curious about marketing on the mobile platform, an iPhone, BlackBerry, that sort of thing. And I talked to a couple of people, ended up reading a lot, learned a lot, and came up with a blog post about stuff that, before I started the research, I didn't know about. But it made me more informed, and it made me look like I knew what I was talking about.
Well, it's kind of like the difference, and I'm sure you've seen the descriptions, the difference between a report and a presentation.
Right.
Like a written report that's 500 pages long and delves into every detail and includes every single number that you're going to need and tables and charts and graphs and all that sort of thing. You read reports or you skim reports to put together your presentation.
Right.
You don't turn that report into a presentation. You're going to die.
Now, what about information as far as you're researching, such as do you quote from people? Do you paraphrase them? What are your thoughts on that? And also, do you acknowledge where that information came from if it is a specific quote you're using?
Well, even if you're going to quote, even if you're going to paraphrase a specific statement, you always need to attribute.
Yeah, Steve Jobs said this the other day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Attribute. If you don't, then you make yourself subject to.
You leave yourself wide open.
Open to charges of plagiarism, that sort of thing. Plus, everything always sounds better if you put it in your own words. It just does.
And you can also comment on something someone said. You say, hey, Steve Jobs, by the way the other day, said X. Well, my take on the whole thing is Y. And so that helps to put it in context what you're saying.
And you need to read more than one source about a given thing, even if it's a cut and dried fact.
Right.
Because each different source will have a slightly different take on it, a slightly different way of presenting it, and in the end, what goes into your presentation is going to be some kind of an amalgam of the 3 or 4 things that you read. So about each different element of your research, you should go to a couple of different sources.
It's like the old movie Rashomon, where the same incident was looked at from, I think, 4 different viewpoints, and everyone had a different view of what happened. You may see the same thing, but everyone saw it differently. And if you can share some different viewpoints of the same event or the same fact, as you put it, and I'll put the little quotation marks in the air there, you might have some interesting stuff to talk about.
Well, yeah, and it's like that old saying: everybody's entitled to their opinion, but nobody's entitled
to their facts.
Well,
I don't know that I totally agree with that, because a lot of facts, to me, a fact is someone's examination and description of something that happened, but someone else may have a different view of it.
Yeah, absolutely. But the point is that you don't want to plagiarize. You do want to attribute when you do quote or paraphrase something specific, and you want to put things in your own words as much as you can.
I think you should be open to new ideas. I think you should look at things efficiently, read selectively. We talked about that. And, I think the biggest thing about research is, boy, you got all this stuff going, you got all this great information, but you have to know when to say when.
Yeah, you need to know when to quit. Because you can spend you can be 10 seconds before you're scheduled to give the presentation.
You can still be doing something. Like some of the designers I work with, the design's never perfect, so they're always tweaking it. But it's being built. It's 90% built. You can't tweak it anymore.
Know when to stop. Yeah. And one of the things that you might want to do with research is something that we ask people to do with a couple of different things about speaking and presenting, and that's keep a file. And that will help you know when to say when, too. When that file's grown to a specific size, you know you can quit. But we ask people to keep story files of good stories that they can use in their presentations. We ask them to keep files for strong adjectives and adverbs that they want to use to spice up their presentation. But keep a file in your research too, and talk about you can even have tabs for the various points that you expect to need to cover. And then when you have 2 or 3 or 4 bits of information behind each tab, quit.
Yeah, and save bits of information and stories and anecdotes from other parts of your life, whether it's maybe a TV show you watched or a conversation you had at the water cooler, doesn't matter. Just save those things. So there's also a couple of resources we'll put on our website. I think the Library of Congress is listed in there, and there's some other sources that we've got from this particular book that we're pulling a couple of notes from. But we'll put those in the show notes, and that wraps up our podcast, by the way, brought to you by Stitcher.com. By the way, I love the Ducks hat, the Ducks shirt. As we speak, they're 5-0. By the time this is out, hopefully they'll be 6-0 for the football team.
Well, my alma mater, I guess you could say, is Lewis and Clark College in Portland. But I did attend classes at the University of Oregon, and many classes at the University of Oregon, in fact. And my daughter is
Your
now.
daughter's there?
My daughter is there now, so she followed Dad's footsteps.
My brother and his wife went there, but interestingly enough, their oldest 3 kids all went to or are going to Oregon State University.
Ooh, that's terrible.
They're
terrible
beavers.
word. Terrible thing. Gosh, don't even mention that.
Well, thanks for joining us for the podcast. Over there is...
I'm Roger Pike.
And I'm Tim Gordon. Appreciate you standing by and listening.
Yes, we do.